I tried to quit academia and I failed. I thank you, Eric. Yeah, and thank you for having me at UCAM. It's been about 10 or 12 years since I've been to Montreal, which is strange because it's very close to home. And I was here a lot, so I'll talk about it. Um, I was kind of moved by the first talk. I'm sad that he had to go because I, like Eisen, feel some of this sort of like a, well, I don't know. I don't know if we know who we are, but we go into strange places and we live double or triple lives. So let's check this out. Some of this is about bioart and my favorite topic, which is making of children that are genetically modified. And some of it is about a little bit of history of my own sound work because most people don't know that I do sound, but I do. So this is me. I also do some performance and I do some, I like to have fun. And, but as I said, I'm sort of interested in these issues of modification of the genetic heritage and sort of neo eugenics uh, and what it has to do with who we are going to become as a species. Um, One of my favorite essays is by Paul Virilio. It's called "Pitiless Art," and it totally talks about bioart as if it was the worst thing possible, like some kind of circus of pain. Yeah, a blatant representation or presentation of horror. In some ways, it's doing what biology or the life sciences does, but without a reason, not trying to cure ALS or Alzheimer's, but instead just going through the motions of biological research in order to make something like art, which is not, at least if you're a scientist, art is fundamentally useless. It's actually like it goes against the idea of formulating an idea. And therefore, you shouldn't use animals or do experiments on humans in the name of art. Um, and I actually took some of this idea that body art was, I mean, that bio art was actually taking body art even further down the wrong path into necrotechnology or thanatophilia. This is pretty good. Those are, it's pretty much the same in French, right? Thanatophile, necrotechnologie. Anyway, so look, teratology. Um, and I like extreme art. I think that shock art is not cheap. Shock art actually shocks people, and that's the point of shock art. And then people say, "Oh, it's just shock art." But the truth is, you're either a jaded urbanite who shock art doesn't work anymore because you've seen it all or experienced it all, or you're actually truly shocked because you're somewhat naive. But either way, it's repulsive, and that's good. I don't know. Maybe I'm old fashioned, like punk, like into that sort of performance art scene, but it is an extreme art. And so I guess um, there's some articles in French on makery. They were translated nicely by Ewan Chardonnay. Do I say his name right? Chardonnay. Almost close. And one of them is about Lulu and Nana, who were the first official transgenic children that were born. They were engineered by someone who did 3 years in jail for doing that in China. He was spurred on by the English, by the US, by Stanford, by the Royal College in London to do this because China wanted to be first, and the Western countries could say, well, they don't have human rights there, so they prepared the road for him and they said, go do it where there's no human rights. And my big thing is if we're going to make transgenic children, that we shouldn't just make them for utilitarian or pragmatic ends or transhuman perfectionism, but that we should make them in terms of art itself and not just classical Renaissance Michelangelo art, but op art or kitsch pop or any of these sort of. Actually, I think it's even anti art. What is an anti art baby? right? And this sort of like Dadaist idea of heritage. And so I came up with some ideas, which are probably easier for you to read than for me to read because they're in French. But these ideas of making sure that the future of humanity is not just based on rationality and science, but based on what it is. It's a form of time-based new media sculpture, right? A kind of embodied art, you know, unless you're really into hyperrealism, and then you can follow the transhumanists all in San Jose, right? To make like superhumans that live forever and have big tits and big dicks. So what, right? I mean, that's really naive, but it's getting more funding than my idea. I also think that this is erotic. Like, I'm not against it. It's really a kind of sex. It's actually a fetishistic sex. It's one of the few monomanias that can produce children. All right? Most monomaniacs, they just fall in love with the tabletop, and they're like, they'll fuck the corner of a table. They like corners. Like, this is a little sort of corner. This is kind of an oblong corner. But they don't usually make babies doing that, right? Non-reproductive sex is hot, but non-reproductive sex in new reproductive technology makes babies with genes from zebras. So a zebra and a giraffe gene inside of a human baby genome, an embryo, is actually bestiality, right? It's actually, but most bestiality is non-reproductive. If you have sex with an elephant, you don't expect a baby. But if you take an elephant's gene and put it into an embryo with a microinjector, you have it's actually, it's effective as it's not just for sport. Anyway. To get a little more serious, well, that is serious, but it's serious like sexual foyer, right? What is frottage in the lab? I like to go into the lab like Eisen. I like to actually go in like this imaginary person who is both electronic musician and physicist. And I spent during COVID, I spent 6 weeks in the animal facility of I3S, which is Portuguese. It's in Porto. Bunch of biolabs, and they took me down to the basement. They took me into BL3, like level of containment 3. And I did everything that I was allowed to do. They were very open with me because I knew all the stuff, and they tested me, and they were like, yeah, you can do what we do. So I looked at the making of transgenic embryos in mice, like the full process, how similar to our camp, right? How to take eggs from mice, how to take sperm, how to mix them under the microscope, how to inject genes into them, how to then re-implant them into a pseudo-pregnant mouse. And I was not allowed to do euthanasia or vivisection, but I was allowed to witness. And so I did, and I helped when I could. I would turn the gas on for the anesthesia. And I would do dissections on they kill the pregnant mothers to take out the embryos to access the ganglia of their spine to study regenerative medicine to stop paralysis. But the reason they take the embryos out after they kill the pregnant mother is so that they're not animals. The mother was an animal and passed the regulations to be used, but the embryos are not animals, and therefore it's just 10 more experiments you can do without having to have any regulation. So I did do cesarean section on a fresh, dead, pregnant mother mouse and take out the embryos and dissect them and take out the ganglia and set them running in some sort of neural regeneration lab. And this implantation of embryos for me, the opening up of a mouse and implanting embryos that are transgenic with different genes is similar to this sort of like fetishism that I'm talking about of interspecies production. A lot of times they're putting human genes into these mouse embryos to humanize them so they can do sort of pseudo-human experiments with them. But these are also children that are alive, human children that are alive in China. There's Lulu and Nena, not their real names, and a third one named Susan or Seven or whatever. So this is not science fiction. So I try to go in as far as I can. In fact, there are many labs around the world where human embryos are kept alive for 7 days, 14 days. In the UK, they're working on 30. There's some labs in Canada where human embryos are being grown that are transgenic, and then it's ensured that they don't go past a legal date, but then they're not euthanized because they're not fully alive yet. Interestingly, these genetically modified children, scientists, and in China also, there's been a call that they have a special facility to care for them. And this facility, I would assume, is not just to enrich the life of them or to study whether or not transgenic humans are ill from the process, but also to study them. Like an animal facility, but for transgenic humans. I'm sure it would have really nice toys. And so some of these things that I investigated in the animal facility, I would assume would be the facility to care for genetically modified children would be a lot like this, including breeding them, I guess some sort of arranged marriage, cryogenically storing parts of them, right? Checking out how the genes are, tissue culturing parts of their body, and all these software programs that actually monitor more than 3 children. One would assume it would be thousands of children, a real animal facility for transgenic humans. And that would include not just mutant design and tissue culture, but also, animal care and use and studying off-target mutations and probably storing their cadavers, right? And commercial services. Let's talk about it. People are wanting these commercial services. So I'm not sure. I'm gonna turn down my sound just in case. I'm a sound artist, but I'm not that good because I'm so into bioart. So this sound is, I've just put the most horrible tinny echo. Maybe I meant it. This is me micro-injecting one mouse sperm into one mouse egg with a CRISPR construct to make that fertilization become transgenic in every cell in that mouse's body. And the reason to do that is to make sure that their testicles or their ovaries have the genes as well. And then you have a little incest and you have, the genes become dominant, and then you can sell the children because they're stabilized transgenic for more. But you notice that I'm kind of into animal enrichment or even pre-animal enrichment. So before injecting this sperm and fertilizing, I'm petting the egg with the micro-injection needle, right? So there's this slight petting, which I guess, even if you're a fetishist, you might have some delicacy, right? So I don't know what to say. This is egg petting. Something no one's ever done in the lab. It was a good day. I'll just do it again. Okay. This is some sort of song in Portuguese. Oh, geez. Sorry. That my partner Dalila was singing. There we go. Okay. I think that's good. So I'm going to take us back a little bit. This is this is more than 20 years ago. My first grant was from the Langlois Foundation here in Montreal. They set me up with a grant to do something called the Workhorse Zoo and another grant to do this project, which was a sound project. I think they like my drawing. It's in their library. It's a micro music massage. And the idea was this was before Skype. This was before video video phones, I set up 2 cameras and 2 microphones and long cords between 2 vibrating chairs. And the idea was that you could talk to each other's butts, right? And kind of vibrate each other with your voices, and that the video would be really big of your face behind you, and people wouldn't look at each other's face, but look above each other at the video because it was bigger than their face. They were far away. And I mean, the idea was that we would have this sort of vibratory experience, and in the middle there would be E. coli growing, which is part of your, it's like 1/3 of all your poop is alive, right? And that you would be talking not just to each other's butts, but to each other's microbiomes. And also the E. coli, we could measure how it was responding to the vibration in some sort of pseudo-scientific, or maybe even make a standard curve and check out the effect. Who knows? It could lead to helping with pharmaceutical fermentation, squeezing all those secondary metabolites out of those E. coli to make better pills for people. But that's not really my key. I'm really into these cheesy, right? These were vibrating chairs with a big, it's like a Freudian chair, right? A Freudian couch with these giant knobs that they were filled with vibroacoustic speakers, just jammed all around, but also inside those knobs. And people did talk to each other's genitals and their, butts. It was pretty good. That's Ken Ronaldo on the back. And you can see kind of the effect because the E. coli is on these flasks are on the vibrating speakers, and you can see the sort of kind of sonic waves going through the fermented. In fact, I made these with a little knob going up similar to the chairs, but out of glass, to form an annular wave, which is sort of a wave that goes out like this. Anyway, I am into animal enrichment, and animal enrichment includes, obviously, embryo enrichment, but also human enrichment because we are animals. I don't know if you've noticed lately, and so everyone needs some sort of enrichment because everyone's in captivity because we've actually put the entire world in jail. And so that's why we have cell phones. Anyway, we do stuff with animals to try to figure out how to enrich them, like talking to zookeepers or ethologists about what, like a rhino doesn't want a video phone because they can't even see so well. They want a smellorama phone to talk to like other endangered rhinos. They want to smell their butt from long distance. So you need that sort of, you need a different kind of interface for different organisms. And another thing, I think this micro music massage started because I was at MIT and I was working with tissue culture and art people, and we were seeding cells at Harvard Medical School while I was at MIT inside of microgravity inducing or simulating tissue culture incubators. And so this is sort of like, you can see the sound similar. These were tissue cultures of bone marrow cells growing on biopolymers. And we actually showed that it did help a lot at embedding the cells into the biopolymers because there was a lot of sound in there. Anyway, this dynamic seeding musical bioreactor was kind of fun, but also using endoscopes to go inside of a musician's clarinet was kind of fun, right? And looking inside a clarinet is just as good as coming up with new experimental design. And you can sort of see here, it gets a little bit rough. Maybe. Anyway, bioart's also kind of lonely. Anyway, where are we? There's like AI in the background. Sorry. What happened to my slideshow? Hold on. I have to come out to go back in. All right. So this was kind of interesting, something I did early on. I went from this to want to not only enrich organisms that were in experiment, but also to have the public do the enrichment themselves in order to let them entertain a non-human, especially a non-human that had to be contained. And so I had some zebrafish or some plants that were supposedly enhanced for some sort of future of more elegant solar power. And the idea was to build a kind of video game console that had like a light sound synthesizer with triple containment inside. Instead of a CRT screen or an LCD screen, we had just a terrarium, but like a tube inside of a box with HEPA filters. It was still before COVID, and this is Margaret Atwood playing this light and sound synthesizer. We put like sort of military dials so that no one could break them, and lots of oscillators and etc. And the idea was that you were enriching these organisms, but that people in an exhibition could do it themselves. Some ways this is great, and in some ways this is just implicating people, right? Like, because they may be doing just that thing that Virilio is talking about, is like a torture artist or Artaud. You know Artaud with the theater of cruelty. It's sort of enticing people to become scientific experimenters on life in the name of pleasing the life is not, it's not, well, I don't know. You decide. Oh my God, I started again. Hold on. Oh, I've done it again. Hold on. So, I mean, really what this comes down to is two big questions. One big question is, those are plants in there that were mutated through whole genome reprogramming to be up and down regulated at the same time. I call them bipolar flowers. And nobody even knows what whole genome reprogramming is, or few people do, but it's not even genetic engineering. It's a epigenetic re-engineering of the entire genome at multiple, like 500 places, up and down regulated changes in gene expression. Nobody knew what these plants were. And also the scientists work with me to make it more esoteric. Even the scientists at the end of it didn't know, because we had them fight for the same landing spaces, these two constructs. So every seed was different. I love scientists that understand my sensibility and sort of like after a while they get into it. But the other question, this is really strange, is electronic music cruel in general, right? I mean, like Stockhausen and Xenakis really were revolutionary in fighting against classical music. And they were atonal and arrhythmic, and even used instruments that weren't stringed instruments or bowed instruments, right? They used like static square waves, etc. I love it, but I love it because my teacher in electronic music class, who also was at UC Davis, but he taught at Mills, Wayne Slauson, introduced me to the Buchla and, 12-track recordings, and also made me listen to Stockhausen and Xenakis on vinyl. And most students of electronic music now, or people that practice it, just try to make stuff that sounds kind of unlistenable like Stockhausen or Xenakis. That's it, right? I mean, it's like if you train them to be making pop music or jazz, they would do that genre. And so it's just a genre. And then do plants like electronic music? Would they rather listen to classical or heavy metal? Or who the hell knows, right? What does the plant want? Something tells me I'm not sure. Nonetheless, like I was saying, I'm kind of into positive disorder engineering, right? Which is You could make a minimal human, like a platonic sphere human, right? No orifices, no eyes, no ears, no mouth, no nose, no anus, right? And just a sphere. It would be a perfect minimal organism. It would be idyllic to be a sphere with no ins and no outs. But I'm against perfection of metabolism, but I'm into maximalization of organismness, whatever that is. And we are in this place, right? I guess we're in this place where life is, it's sort of blurry. Does that make sense? Are we, I don't know. We talk a lot about whether or not in vitro fertilization takes the love out of reproduction, or whether it's a technical feat that helps with infertility, or whether it is where the hottest love is now, is like the technicians working together to make a baby are having sex with, and the parents are secondary. It's kind of confusing. Okay, so Habermas is saying here, this is probably easier in French for a lot of you, but it's not violating the rights of another person, right? It's a pre-person. The neurons are not attached to the body yet. The brain and the eyes don't function yet. But the formation of the born person is altered in a way that cannot be changed. And you can't ask. Now, were any of you asked to be born by your parents? Did your parents make you thinking of you? Were they just drunk? Were they enjoying sex? Did one of them want beauty and one want money? Or switch it around, you know what I mean? Or both. I mean, I want both. Anyway, so this is about I don't know. I mean, Sloterdijk is nice here, but a lot of what he was saying is that we already live in a human zoo. So this is a nice quote about anthropotechnology, but he actually said, like, we should work only on ourselves. You know, like, leave the animals alone. We should maybe put ourselves in domes and give the rest of the earth back. So I guess this comes back to this thing: is science a snuff film? Is calling art extreme an insult, right? Right, Sylvia? We're going to talk. Is extreme art an insult to the art, or is that like a compliment? And so one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was, what does it mean to think of biodiversity itself as not being every organism is becoming perfect for its habitat, or we are going to reach a pinnacle of evolution where we become supermen or superwomen or super people? Or is Occam's razor not apply? Occam's razor says the universe eventually will find a unified theory, so it's sort of like monotheism, it's beautiful, it's oneness, and therefore on the way to discovering the oneness, we should just assume that everything is as elegant as it can be until proven otherwise. So go with the most elegant proof. And some biologists that I've talked to said we refer to the human genome as Occam's dump truck, because it's a fragmented mess. It has nothing to do with elegance. It actually has more to do with free jazz. Like, really jamming with your viruses when they come, interfacing. And so the biodiversity between all the butterflies and all the salamanders and all, you have eagles and mold and us, that these are all versions of an archaic organism going in every direction and not with a purpose, not for fitness, right? In fact, if you look at the number of different kinds of butterflies or mosquitoes or humans, etc., the range, well, primates, right? the range defies the concept of fitness. In fact, there's too many variations on the theme for it to be anything but abundance. In other words, there's excess of energy. There's not a fight. It's not biosociology or social Darwinism. There's too much energy. And so it comes down to like sexual selection and dance and play and that leading to biodiversity and also just total mutation and loving weird patterning. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the orgy of heredity, okay, but I don't think it has anything to do with elegance or becoming more refined. It has to do with decoration and obscurity. It actually is a lot like noise music or electronic music, right? As any sound possible at any cost, right? So what is the relationship between concrete poetry or sound text poetry or and vitalism itself, right? And how should that control the kind of behavior that you engage in? And so I just want to take a moment and listen to some lovely harpsichord music. And I'm going to just flip through this a little for you. These are sort of, what are these called? Flatworms, right? This is life. This is you. Does that make sense? The
anterior cells of the pseudoplasmodium will form the stalk. The more posterior cells differentiate into spore cells.
Okay, this is super weird. Hold on. How do I say this? This is before, wait, this is the origin of multicellular organisms. Okay, so I'm going to just take you through this really quickly. Oh, geez. Oh, I was right there. Go back. I know you can go back. You can go back. You can go back. I want to go back. Wow. Okay. Sorry. Damn. Okay, so I'm kind of, if you can't tell, a little bit obsessed with development of organisms in general. But how do I say this? Slime molds start as single cellular organisms, and if they run out of food, they do something called chemotaxis, which is chemical talking, and they all come together to one place and they form a multicellular organism. And then they grow into this big stalk, and the top of the stalk explodes, sending germ cells or embryos in every direction to try to find new food. It's amazing to watch, but also like this is how our bodies were formed from single-celled organisms. And that explosion means that the stalk itself and the base, how do I say
At the top
this?
of the screen, the primary mesenchyme cells have formed a small
That's not it. This is it. Okay, watch when they get hungry. This should be familiar to you because you have a body. You aggregated from single cells. You are made of many cells, right? Here is the formation.
In a chemotactic response to starvation, individual amoebae migrate to form large aggregates.
I mean, first of all, how do they know where to go? They don't have noses. They don't have eyes. They have some chemical trail that says, meet me all together and come together. And then why does the base and the stalk commit suicide to help the thing on the top explode? That's very, very selfless for a single-celled organism, for a monad. You know? Look at them coming together. They do it in fast motion. You can see the mountain forming of the body. So it's just a pile, right? Here it is in fast motion.
In this aggregation response, the cells will form moving streams.
Oh, they come together and then they walk together in lines into the pile, right? So, like, our bodies are just desperation. Does that make sense? We started as many single-celled organisms and became multicellular out of the need to cooperate to survive. That sounds like fitness. So what else would it be? The fun of climbing into a mountain. It's like, it is an orgy, isn't it? Okay. I can't spend all day on this. But I could. I would. But I won't. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to take you through a couple of things. This one is something I did at Leiden University not too long ago, and it had a soundtrack, so I'll play some of it. I think.
Microbiome. Prizes! Most consistent poop, most group bonding poop, and most in need of everybody's poop.
So this is something called FMT Umble, which is a fecal microbiota transfer umble, which is similar to Bumble, a dating service, but it's a dating service where we took samples of people's fecal matter and ran it through a sort of some sort of Illumina sort of sequencing machine and read the sequence and tried to figure out who should date who according to their poops, their fecal matter. And we had a lot of different things. Like we found out some people were total receivers, that they could actually do a fecal microbiota transfer from anybody and they would be better off because maybe their microbiota was so depleted that any other person's microbiota would be good. This person won the total receiver most receptive microbiome, and we helped her feel her fabulousness. And this has to do with fecal transplant, but it also has to do with who should date each other. So we set people up at a table to talk to each other. Like, you seem biologically compatible. A lot of people think it's funny, but actually, like, a good third of your personality is not your human body, but is actually your response to the metabolic interactions of the organisms that live inside of you, right? And actually we had some of the FASTA results were imaged by Francois, right? Joseph. And these are his sort of using Gephi software and looking actually deeply into the high resolution data. He was able to arrive at two of the people's sort of ways of imaging their microbiomes. And so I think that this is good. I still haven't gotten it to them and said, by the way, this is not just your portrait, but sort of like a data, I mean, it's a beautification of data, but that happens all the time, not just in the arts, but in Nature magazine, in science. You need beautiful data to get published. But also you can read personality into these images. And they're high res somewhere, right? I got them today. Thank you. Okay, I want to take you through a few more things, and then you have to tell me when I have 5 minutes, because I'll go forever. But I did do something for scientists because I'm not always, like, I'm a little critical, but I'm not so critical as I am like, I very much approve of science's demented sexuality. But we were doing enrichment in the lab for the lab animals, and I realized that no artist enriches scientists, right? We're always like, can you make some art with us about your science? And the scientists are like, that's the most boring art I've ever seen. It looks just like my job. I really don't want to do this with you. Like, I'll do it for you if you really need to. Maybe you can fix my poster because you're an artist. But they don't get always the respect, as both artists and scientists are into curiosity-based research. They're interested in exploring what's unknown and going to the void. And artists like to get inspiration from the void. They're not trying to capture it in a black box and make it repeat itself, but they do go to the same place, a very respectable place, which is called fundamental research. Artists and scientists, and a lot of scientists are not allowed to do fundamental research. They wish they were. That's why they went in. And when they see artists doing fundamental research in their lab, they say, "You're more of a scientist than I am." Like, I'm stuck doing the protocols for my boss, this kind of thing. But on the other hand, what do scientists want for enrichment? They want action painting and jazz. They want to learn how to do that because that's the fun art anyway. Maybe some modern dance, but we'll get there. And so I even had a sound guy. One thing I did for the scientists was I gave them white suits with booties and gloves to protect them from the paint, right? And the other thing is that I gave them a protocol for abstract painting and a protocol for John Cage-like, jazz sort of stuff. I worked with another guy he brought in all sorts of sound makers and vinyl that you could play at different speeds and backwards, and kind of talked about sonic improvisation and indeterminacy, and mentioned John Cage, etc. We gave them a kind of lesson, and then they played the jazz and they action painted, and there was 20 grad students and 5 scientists, and they had so much fun. Enrichment we did also in the lab for the mice, right? Because they're in captivity. But what I'm saying is that humans are also in captivity, and we show signs of neurotic behavior because of that, and we need enrichment. And so we really did do this, but we actually performed a version of Variations 4 by John Cage with them. And this is a scientist that basically makes CRISPR constructs for mice and he's really studying human disease. But also I was like, damn, dude, you're a pretty good artist. Okay, so look, I'm making fun of electronic music a little bit, that it's atonal, that it's rampant, anarchistic, and that's the origin of our bodies, so that the sonic stuff that we like that might not be quite listenable is also the originator and the symptom of life itself, of anatomy.
Adam,
Yeah.
just maybe we will want to talk to each other after the end.
Yeah.
So when you're ready to resume, it's up to you.
Okay. Give me 2 minutes. Okay, so a little bit of, I guess we'll have a sonic moment. This is sort of fun for the sound people. I made a Zorb ball with speakers on the right and left, up and down and front and back, and therefore if you roll around in the Zorb ball, you have sextophonic sound that's moved by your body. It's kind of like an embodied virtual reality. And also I did a lot of stuff with really, go ahead. That's not noise. That's sound. It's just really, it's sextophonic, like 6 low volume, like binaural, but sextonaural. Very low. You can turn it up a little. These guys like sound.
And find insight through green meditation.
Can you hear those sextophonic low volumes doing that shit to you? Okay, so look, I'm not gonna get into this. Oh no, or this, I'll wrap it up. Tomorrow I'll do something along the lines of live DJing with sound, something like this. That's it. I think that we have to wrap it up, right, Aaron?